Six Underground, available on Netflix now, a new action movie directed by Michael Bay, starring Ryan Reynolds. The premise is as simple as it is ridiculous. Ryan Reynolds, who's basically playing himself most of the time, is a billionaire who fakes his own death and becomes a vigilante, trying to bring down dictators and make the world a better place. He's not alone though, he's got a team of 6 people, hence the title. An acrobat, an assassin, a driver, a doctor, a spy, and he himself is a tech guy slash financier. Now, the way that this film was actually conceived and created, I imagine, is Netflix came to Michael Bay and said, listen, we saw your art. We saw Armageddon, we saw Bad Boys, and most importantly, we saw Transformers. Here's $150 million. Here's a pile of cocaine. Now, go make us a film. As a result, I expected a movie that would be absolutely wild and bombastic and explosive and insane. Something along the lines of the latest Fast and Furious movies. I was not prepared, however, for what I got in the end. So much so that for the first time ever, I had to take notes during the film so that I wouldn't later miss anything that I wanted to point out and to talk about. So the film opens, I'm going to read them out loud in a second. The film opens with a 20-minute action sequence, and here's what happens during the first 20 minutes, okay, before any exposition even occurs. So we have a car chase around completely geographically incorrect Firenze in Italy, and during that action sequence, during that car chase, there's 6 different pop songs. I started counting at 3 and then I just updated it as we went along. Now, it's entirely possible that those were actually 2 different songs, but they just randomly stop and start at different moments, and they all kind of sound similar, so who knows. 6 individual occurrences of pop songs anyway. There's a dick joke, there's a shit joke, there's a slow motion shot, a really gratuitous shot of a beautiful lady in a red dress, where it literally, the camera slows down and they drift around the corner, and there's this random lady hopping on a Vespa, and one guy is like, checking her out, and I love Italy. It's ridiculous. There's one person is jumping between roofs for no apparent reason at all, other than to look cool, of course. There's skating with a grenade launcher, which of course is used at one point, and it's the same guy that jumps on roofs, by the way. There's dozens of crashes, explosions. There's swearing all the time. There's squirting blood, and Ryan Reynolds uses an eyeball, a severed eyeball hanging on the nerve to unlock a phone that they stole from a lawyer, I guess. That's, just to remind you, that's the first 20 minutes of the film. Then after that ended, I continued taking notes throughout the film to kind of write down what I noticed. So here's some other stuff that I noted. Editing, shit. Dialogue, shit. Sound design, shit. Color grading, why is everything yellow? Well, because it's a Michael Bay film. Shit. There's the Bond scene. This is gonna be a minor spoiler, by the way, but come on, nobody watches this movie for a story, okay? So there's this one scene which looks like ripped from Casino Royale at the beginning, because there's the main character, Reynolds. He's at a bar at some fancy party, and the villain is next to him, and they order drinks, and they begin. The villain literally orders martini, shaken, not stirred. Okay, so there's martini. Then there's Ryan Reynolds gets into banter with him. Then there's a sexy bartender. Then Ryan Reynolds begins to flirt with her, and then suddenly there's a hard cut to the next scene, which is a sex scene between him and the bartender, and the villain is just kind of forgotten. And after the sex scene, there's another hard cut to the night table at which you have the expensive watch that Ryan Reynolds was wearing beforehand. So I literally couldn't make this up. It's like, I can't imagine how or rather I can imagine how someone must have come up to Michael Bay and said, listen, Michael, this doesn't make sense. This looks like a cheap parody of Bond. He was like, shh, martini, banter, sexy bartender, sex scene, watch. And they did it anyway. The film is jumping timelines all the time, which is confusing as hell. There's another random sex scene happening after another random action sequence, which is also pretty much just a hard cut between action and sex, and it doesn't make any sense at all. And it doesn't forward the plot in any way, by the way. There's the term coup d'etat is explained to the audience, what it means, what it literally means, and so that kind of helps us identify the target audience of this film. There are multiple references to various movies and TV shows, and they are all exclusively embarrassing. And the movie even tries to make fun of it, because Ryan Reynolds at one point says, okay, enough with the movie references, but they don't stop. There's occasional emotional moments that are completely laughable and you can't treat them seriously. And the third act is complete nonsense, double underlined. And nonsense is what can be said about the whole movie, really. It doesn't make any sense at all. And unfortunately, it doesn't make any sense for the audience to watch it. It's like a Frankenstein's monster where Bay took elements of Fast and Furious, James Bond, John Wick, Mission Impossible, and Batman, merged them together without any understanding of what works about any of those franchises. And the result is just atrocious in every way. I know that this is supposed to be a light-hearted action movie with no depth whatsoever, but it fails at being competent at even that. Put it this way, all those other series exist, and as long as they do, why would you watch this retarded bastard child instead? Even the Fast and the Furious series wins because it's not taking itself seriously. At some point it realized, and it knows now, that it is so absolutely batshit insane that it needs to have this self-awareness and distance towards itself. And Six Underground has made me laugh a couple of times, yes, and it has Reynolds being Reynolds, breaking the fourth wall. But other than that, this self-awareness and distance are not really here. And what you're left with is just pure high-octane insanity with none of the fun. It's like you told a horny 15-year-old to make a movie. This is the result. So unless you really want to get drunk with your mates and watch something unintentionally funny and nonsensical, unless you want to do that, stay away from this film.